Coming in at number 10, we have the Los Feliz murder house. Back in the 1950s, in a quaint town of Los Feliz, there would be something horrific that would take place on Christmas Eve. A doctor would come home to his wife and 3 children to have dinner with them. Everything seemed to be normal, but it turned out that something horrible was brewing. That night, when everyone was asleep, he grabbed a hammer, came upstairs, and ended his wife's life. He then went after his children, but they were able to get away and find protection with the neighbors before he was able to do any sort of serious damage. The police came through, and by the time they got there, they found the doctor dead next to his wife. He did an intentional overdose with sleeping pills. The neighborhood was now in terror, but the mystery still stands as to why this father of 3 would all of a sudden snap. There was evidence that the family was having some financial struggles, and the pressure of his family living in poverty might have drove the man mad. Others think that there could have been an affair or some sort of drug use that made the husband go crazy, but in the end the intention of this deranged man was taken to the grave with him. Coming at number 9, we have Matilda Rooney explodes. The last thing you want to happen on Christmas is your wife to explode in front of you, but not everyone is so lucky. For this story we need to go back to the 1700s. Matilda and Patrick Rooney were an old couple that didn't have much to do on Christmas or many friends to share it with, so they decided to invite John Larson over to spend some time with them on this Christmas night. The 3 of them would have a wonderful dinner, and after an evening of some drinks, John found himself sleepy and decided it was time to go to bed. He woke up in the middle of the night because he could smell smoke. He just assumed that someone was burning a fire outside, and he decided that he would go back to sleep. Well, when he woke up in the morning, he would find something much more deadly than a small fire. There was a pair of burnt feet that were singed into the ground and a deep hole of ash. It looked as if an extremely intense ball of heat incinerated something on the spot. John was shocked and rushed to find Patrick, who was found dead. Apparently he died from smoke inhalation. None of this made sense because there was almost no way that someone could have lit Matilda on fire without burning down the house. It would seem that she spontaneously combusted. And guys, make sure you hit that like button because it really helps us out. Coming in at number 8, we have the cat food console. I'm sure you guys have heard of the recent debacle of people ordering PS5s and them not arriving, but instead they get a big box of cat food at their front door. If that happened to me, I think I would spontaneously combust. But as it turns out, this isn't the first time that something like this has happened. Well, kinda. This story was pulled from Reddit, and while it's not as brutal as the first 2, it's still just as scary, I think. A Reddit user talked about how on Christmas, when they were only 8 years old, they were ripping open presents under the tree. They were having a great time, and then they got to one that really changed the mood in the room. It was a box of cat food. They were shocked at first, and then they were upset, but they quickly understood that this was a joke, and then they turned to laugh with their family. But the look on their parents' face was pure horror. Apparently this box of cat food was supposed to be a laptop. They had wrapped the gift themselves. His parents were shocked and grilled the other members of the family who were there, but no one knew what was going on. In the end, they never found out what happened to the laptop. What might have happened is someone broke into the house and replaced the present with duds that had the same wrapping paper. That would suck. Coming in at number 7, we have the night before Christmas. If you're gonna put some work out there, you better slap your name on it because people will try and take credit for it if you don't. To this day, no one knows who sent the poem "'Twas a Night Before Christmas" to the Troy newspaper in 1823. The author, Clement Clark Moore, came forward to take credit for it, but there are several people who think it would have been impossible for Moore to write this piece. For one, the dude was a sourpuss who had no love in his heart. That's a real thing that people would say about him. And when rewriting the poem, he wrote the names of the 2 reindeer as Donner and Blitzen as we all know them. But the only reason that those names are like that is because of a printing error. The original names were Dunder and Blitzen, which are Dutch for thunder and lightning. Coming in at number 6, we have Patty Vaughn. Patty Vaughn and her husband were slowly splitting up. They had already decided that they didn't want to be together anymore, but things were kind of complicated because they had 3 kids together. Tensions kept building until everything exploded on Christmas Eve. Patty Vaughn's husband, JR, found out that she was already seeing other people. Patty fled the house and took off with her van. This was the last time that anyone heard from her. Her van was found later with blood splattered in it. An investigation was launched, but no evidence ever came back to link JR to the death of his missing wife. Eventually he moved his family out of state, and it stands as a mystery to this day. Some of the more plausible explanations for this are that JR and his family tracked down Patty, and as a group they killed and disposed of her body, but to this day nothing has been solved. Coming in at number 5 is the arson bandit. Back in the 1970s, a series of fires were lit in a small town in the southern United States. These were violent acts that seemed to be all targeted at family homes, but then again it might have just been random. 8 fires were lit for unknown reasons, and all of them were done on Christmas Eve within a 5-mile radius of each other. It would seem that none of these families had anything in common with each other, so these fires were most likely lit at random. Someone was out there and just wanted to watch the world burn. Coming in at number 4, we have the missing Sodder children. The year was 1945, and the Sodders would have something happen to them that would change their lives forever. George and Jenny Sodder were the parents of 9 children, and on Christmas Eve their house would catch fire, and they were in a panic to save their kids. They were only able to get 4 of their 9 kids out of the fire safely. The blaze burned in front of them, and the family was in terror as they couldn't find their other children. The fire eventually burned out, and after investigating the home, there were more questions to be raised. The bodies of the 5 children were nowhere to be found. Even though they were caught in a fire, there should have been some of the remains left behind, but there was nothing. This led the family to believe that they could have maybe made it out of the fire. Both the parents searched for their children until the day they died. They even put up billboards with their pictures to try and see if anyone could find them. There were suspicions that the mafia could have lit their home on fire and kidnapped their kids because George Sodder was very outspoken about how he hated Mussolini. Next on the list we have Kimberly Maria McLean. This is a wild story. Kimberly McLean was married to a very wealthy man in Texas. The two of them had a family, but he was very suspicious of her. Kimberly was a very secretive person, and she would tell her husband very little about her past. Eventually her lies started to catch up with her, and her husband wanted the truth. Kimberly kept lying. This led to her husband divorcing her, and this made Kimberly fall into a deep depression. On Christmas Eve she would walk onto her in-laws' front lawn and take her own life. This launched a massive investigation, and it turns out that Kimberly McLean had been using a fake identity this whole time. Her husband didn't even know her as Kimberly. The name he knew her as the entire time was Lori Erica Ruff, and that was the 3rd identity she had used. She had been jumping from persona to persona ever since she was 17 years old when she ran away from home. She was able to take the identity of a dead person and get a social insurance number, and then she changed her identity again when she moved to Texas. Coming in at number 2, we have Traceey Mertens. Traceey Mertens was dating Joey Cavanagh, and the two of them were raising their children together. They weren't in the best relationship, and Joey had an on-again, off-again battle with drugs. This led to him constantly owing people money. They had just moved to a new town, and it was just a few days before Christmas when they were all set to settle down. Traceey went back to their old home to grab the last few things, but in that moment she was attacked. 2 men grabbed her, tied her up, and started to interrogate her to find out where her boyfriend was. They would later take her to a church and try to kill her by lighting her on fire. She would survive long enough to give her story to the police, but due to complications she would die a few days later. To this day, no one knows who might have killed Traceey Mertens. Her boyfriend Joey Cavanagh has been questioned several times about who could have committed these crimes, but he insists that he has no idea who could have done this. And coming at the number 1 spot, we have the disappearance of Ben Smart and Olivia Hope. This was one of the biggest missing person cases to ever hit New Zealand. This took place right after Christmas. Ben Smart and Olivia Hope were having a big night of partying. They were seen at the Furno Lodge, which was a hot spot that night. There were a ton of people celebrating. The two of them met a stranger that offered them a ride back to a yacht where the two of them could keep partying all night long. They jumped on the boat and got ferried over to this yacht. I mean, it would be hard to say no to something like that. Well, this would be the last time that anyone would see them. Their parents would report them missing, and after a thorough investigation, they found that Scott Watson could be the killer. He was later convicted of killing both of them, but to this day, the remains of Ben Smart and Olivia Hope have never been found. Some people believe that Scott is innocent, and he has appealed this case several times. In 2020, the case was reopened to investigation. Coming in number 10, we have mistletoe. This one is supposed to be so cute. You have some mistletoe hanging hanging in a doorway, and then two people pass under and they got a kiss on the lips. Yeah, maybe it's cute back in the 80s, but there's no way that's gonna fly now. You think because there's a little piece of foliage hanging in a doorway, you get to lock lips with me no matter who you are? Are you trying to catch a charge, my guy? To be honest, I don't think I've ever seen mistletoe outside of a movie, so maybe it wasn't something normal people would put up in their house. It was just something that Hollywood would use to slip in some jokes into Christmas movies. But I think that this tradition has been long dead, and if you see it in someone's house, you might want to pretend like you gotta take a call and go outside and then drive home before you have any dinner, because that person is a certified creep. The only people who are gonna be kissing me on Christmas is the family dog, if they have one, because sometimes you gotta kiss a dog right on the lips. It's not weird, it's just healthy for your soul. Coming into number 9, we have Red Santa. Why is Santa the color red? Well, if you know your history, the original representation of the King of Christmas was him all dressed in green. So how did he become famously red? Well, that's because Coke took that image and then traded his green clothes for something that was a little bit more friendly to their brand. It's actually that Coke made the big dude red. Mind you, red was already a color that was associated with Christmas, which made it easier for them to make the shift, but now he is known around the world as being in a big red suit. So every year when Christmas rolls around, you can bet all your Christmas presents that Coke will put out a commercial that is going to have the big dude in a red suit so Coke can sell more product that year. As a kid, you thought Santa was just something to inspire a little bit of Christmas spirit, and then you learned that the whole thing has been a trick to make you spend more money and buy more Coke. That is just a terrifying thought. And guys, remember to hit that like button because it really helps us out. Coming in at number 8, we have the origin of Santa. So where did the big fluffy dude come from? Well, there are a few ideas. Some say that he's actually from the pagan faith, that the character of Father Christmas was some forest dude who would come out of the foliage and hand out gifts to kids. That sounds super sus. There's no way that I would let any kids get some gifts from some dude who just walked out of the forest and looks like he's wearing pajamas. But if that isn't the origin, then the other option is actually he came from a German tale of where Santa was followed around by Krampus, who would be the evil version of him. In this tale, the two of them work together and separate the naughty from nice kids. The nice kids get gifts and the naughty kids get stuffed in a sack and then turned into food. When you know Santa used to be associated with a guy that dark, it really changes his picture in the long run. Coming in at number 7, we have Coming Down the Chimney. The classic tale of Santa is that he comes down the chimney to give you your gifts, so if you live in a condo, no presents for you. It looks like you're gonna have a hollow Christmas and have to pay some condo fees. And even though it seems like it would just be a little nice addition to the big red dude's mystical story, it actually has a lot to do with more ancient tales. There are dozens of stories from around the world that tell of some sort of horrible monster that would use your chimney as a way to sneak into your home. There were stories of witches in Ireland that would crawl down your chimney, come into your home and take your kids and then turn them into stew. Yikes! And there was a horrible creature in Pennsylvania back in the 19th century that would come and do a very similar thing as to what Santa would do. This was a goblin-esque monster that would give nice kids fruit and then punish bad kids with a whip, which sounds a lot like Santa and Krampus. So maybe the big dude from the north is actually affiliated with these creeps, or he just took their delivery system for himself because he realized how good it was to get into houses. But for real, if you live in a basement apartment, you're not gonna get anything. I feel like those people need presents more than anybody else. Coming in at number 6, we have He Sees You When You're Sleeping. We all know the song, you better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why, Santa Claus is coming to town. Well, it's a great song to tell kids to behave around the holidays, but in that song he also says he sees you when you're sleeping, he knows when you're awake. Excuse me? We got another creep on the list. This holiday that we thought was all about being nice to people and spending time with your family secretly has a ton of creeps in it. Also, it's a bad idea to make your kids think that the only reason they should be nice is because Santa's watching and because they're gonna get some presents out of it. Because once they find out that Santa doesn't exist, they're not gonna have any motivation to be a respectful person. They should want to be a good person person because it's the right thing to do, not because they're getting paid for it. Cut out being a creep, Santa, and kids, learn to be nice for the sake of being nice. Coming in at number 5, we have a depressing snack. So why do we leave out milk and cookies on Christmas Eve? Well, it's because Santa's going to come through and he's gonna be hungry, and you have to give him a little fuel so he can keep making these trips around the world and spreading love. I don't think a diet of sugar and dairy is the best way to energize the dude who's trying to deliver presents to the whole world, but to each their own. But apparently this started as a Depression era tradition. People leaving out milk and cookies for St. Nick was something that was popularized in America during the Great Depression. This was something to show how grateful you were for having enough food and milk to spare. So Santa was coming in and taking food from struggling families during the Great Depression? How dare he? How could this dude be so heartless? We must cancel Santa. Coming in at number 4, we have caroling. People coming to your door to sing you a nice song. That is in the Christmas spirit. That sounds so sweet. How could something like that have a dark past? Well, when people started caroling, they didn't use this to just go to someone's home and sing to them. Carolers used to be vandals. They would go to people's homes and then they would sing to them, and in exchange for singing, they wanted food or a place to sleep or sometimes money. And if you didn't give them any of those things, they would change their tune. They might start singing a song that was more violent, like about burning your house to the ground. And if you didn't give in after that, they would start to destroy your property, and they might even break into your home and attack you and steal your things. Basically, carolers were some of the most dangerous people around Christmas time. They would go from door to door threatening people through song and trying to steal from them. That's not really the Christmas spirit that we're used to. Coming in number 3, we have Good King Wenceslas. This is a pretty famous Christmas story of a king that would go around and what he would do to try and be kind. People think that this is largely an inspiration for Santa Claus because he would find poor people and give them small gifts so winter wasn't so harsh on them. Now what people don't know is this was an actual dude. Wenceslas, the Duke of Bohemia, used to travel around and give people goods, and it turns out he wasn't liked by everyone. In our version of the story, they leave out this part. Apparently his brother didn't like him and ordered to have him killed, which he was, publicly. Yeah, they leave that part of the story. Yeah. Coming in at number 2, we have the color red. We all know what Christmas colors are, green and red. Everyone knows that. But do you know what the colors signify? Well, the color green is about eternal life, and the color red is all about the blood of Jesus. Yeah, excuse me, what? Yeah, the thing that you thought was a fun themed color attached to the big red coat Santa wears? No. That's not it at all. Of course, Jesus was apparently born on Christmas, and even though we forget that sometimes, the day is really about him. So when we see red plastered everywhere, it's supposed to show that Jesus spilled his blood so we can have a nice holiday. I mean, that really takes some of the cheer out of it. I thought we were supposed to sit around and get drunk and argumentative with our families, but apparently we're supposed to also remember one of the most horrific moments in human history. Well, that really takes the fun out of the fondue set you just opened up. Coming into the number 1 spot, we have The Nutcracker, a holiday movie that is a certified classic. When people think about the music of The Nutcracker, you automatically think about snow falling from the sky and a bunch of people celebrating together as they dance, or something about ballet. I have to admit, I've never seen The Nutcracker, but I know that it has a lot to do with Christmas, and I looked it up for this point. The movie is messed up. It's about a girl who is transported to a world of living dolls, which sounds like a kid's dream. It's a cross between Toy Story and the Chronicles of Narnia. But that's until things get way darker. So the little girl, who is the main character in the movie, tells her family about this magical world. They think she's crazy, so she moves to the doll world and decides to never come back. So one day they wake up and their daughter is gone. After they already thought their daughter went crazy, so they probably just thought that she ran away from home in the middle of winter. That's depressing!
Starting off this list at number 10, we have a story called The Naughty List. One night, a boy named Eddie awoke to the sound of footsteps. He went downstairs to check it out and saw a man dressed in red and white with a hat and a white beard and a big round belly, and thought to himself, did I just catch Santa? As he got closer, he felt like something was off about the jolly old Saint Nick he knew so much about. When this fake Santa turned around and saw Eddie, he told him to run back up to bed or else he would end up on the naughty list. Eddie headed toward the stairs to head back to bed, but ended up sticking around and peeking around the corner to spy on Santa and see what he could see. Eddie watched him head towards the fireplace to head up the chimney, but all of a sudden Eddie saw green flames that knocked the Santa back onto the ground. Suddenly, a creature began to crawl out of the fireplace where the green flames were coming from. This monster looked at the Santa character and said what Eddie assumed was his real name. Bruce, the monster said. Bruce replied that he had done his job. He said he had just gone to 10,000 houses like the monster asked him to do. The monster replied that one of the rules was to not let a human child see you, which Eddie realized was him. Bruce asked for a second chance, but the monster refused. Eddie closed his eyes because he was scared of what was to come next. Eddie heard a loud crunch that was followed by a few more crunches and then a snapping sound. As Eddie opened his eyes, he saw the monster looking right at him with red and white pants hanging out of his mouth. He ate Santa! Well, not the real Santa, of course.
Coming in at number 9, we have the Grither. What else is up north with St. Nick and all the elves? You think with all the magic up there, there would have to be something else that might not be as nice. Well, that is where the Grither lives. He's big and bad and will come to your home if you do one thing wrong. See, the Grither is an ugly beast that lives in a cave. It's said that his cave is the coldest and dampest place in the whole world. Not where I would build my first home, but the Grither doesn't seem to be bothered by his living situation. He's as tall as a tree and has long, thick arms and fists big enough that they could wrap around your head. His skin is see-through. You can see all the horrible veins that are plastered throughout his body. Blue and red span all the way through his should-be corpse, but still, all of this he is fine with. He doesn't mind his appearance one bit. I like his body positivity, but what he doesn't like is his name. The Grither's ears are so big that he can hear all the way around the world. Every time someone says his name, he hears them and his ears grow bigger. If you say his name, he will use them to fly to your home. He'll wrap his hands around your head and Grither you, which is popping your head like a tomato. So telling that story is a great way to make sure that your kids sleep tight on Christmas Eve, especially because you have to say the name Grither like 13 times to finish the story.
In our number 8 spot today, we have a story called Silent Nightmare. This story is a cautionary tale to those who stay up waiting for Santa on Christmas Eve instead of soundly sleeping like they're supposed to be. This story says that staying awake is behavior that can land you on the naughty list. Of course, it is every person's nightmare to end up on the naughty list, because who wants a lump of coal waiting for them under the tree on Christmas morning? Well, the story goes that if you stay up waiting for Santa, you are about to meet a fate potentially worse than just a lump of coal. Since Santa knows everything, like when you're sleeping or awake, or if you've been good or bad, he'll definitely know if you're trying to sneak a peek of him delivering gifts. Apparently, if you stay awake on Christmas Eve, Santa will throw you in his gift sack and take you all the way back to the North Pole, where he then makes you join all the other elves. After all, how do you think he gets all those small elves?
Coming in number 7, we have the witches. The best part of the holidays is the amount of food they get to consume guilt-free. It's the time of year you get to get fat and plump, and you might as well enjoy it because it's going to be a while before it comes back. Well, you better watch out, because not everyone who's handing out sweets has good intentions. This Christmas witch goes door to door during Christmas time. She'll knock on your door and request for a donation. Christmas is a cold time of year and there are plenty of homes that have more than enough. If you give her a donation, she will thank you and be on her way. If you reject it, she will do something in return. She will offer you some sweets. She will say, if you can't receive, then you must give. It will seem like a nice gesture, but it's actually a trap. For as soon as you eat the candy, your stomach will turn, your skin will turn gray, your teeth will fall out, and your hair will come loose. For if you can't give the witch a simple gift on the holiday season, she will take your beauty and your youth.
In our number 6 spot today, we have the Underworld Toy Shop. This is a story of the toy shop that we don't hear about. We all know that Christmas gifts are made by the elves in their joy-filled workshop, but apparently there's a workshop beneath the one that we all know about that is dark and filled with some pretty creepy things. First of all, the elves who work in it are the elves who lack any sort of holiday cheer. These elves are mean and selfish and had been banished from the happy workshop. These elves make toys that are easily breakable, and they have no love put into them. There's an elf named Urgra who used to work in the happy workshop. He had loved creating toys for all the boys and girls around the world and put so much love into each gift he made. He loved the toys he created so much he wished that he could keep them for himself. One day, another elf who was a friend of his made a beautiful music box that was meant to be a gift for a king's son. When Urgra saw this music box, he had never wanted anything so badly in his whole life, so he decided to devise a plan to sneak into the workshop at night and take it for himself. To his surprise, as he was executing his plan, his friend who had made made the music box ended up coming into the shop, catching him in the act. Stealing is an unforgivable act among the elves, and this ended up getting him banished into the underworld toy shop, never to see the light of day or the magic of Christmas again.
Okay, coming in number 5, we have fart cookies. When your mom tells you not to eat cookies because it's going to spoil your appetite, you better listen, because you might get pranked so hard it'll ruin your Christmas. This story follows a brother and sister. The mother laid out a tray of homemade cookies and told them not to eat them until after dinner. The kids waited for their mother to leave the room and then pounced on the cookies, eating them so fast at first they didn't notice the horrible taste. Both him and his sister rushed to the bathroom and started puking. If they had listened, they might have noticed the can of skunk spray that their mother added to the cookies.
In our number 4 spot today, we have Christmas Eve hollering. This story takes place on Christmas Eve at the Willinger family cabin. John and Elizabeth Willinger have always had the best parties in town, and they always took place at their cabin. This Christmas Eve, they were of course having a Christmas party, and John was in the middle of telling a story when the entire party heard John's hunting dogs outside just suddenly start barking like crazy. John went to go and scope out what was happening out there, but his grown son Charlie volunteered to go in his place. Charlie got his coat and his boots and headed out into the night, and the entire party sat in silence waiting for him to return. After 10 minutes of waiting in the quiet, everyone in the party heard Charlie screaming outside, and they all ran out to help. When they got outside, they saw all the hunting dogs huddled up together, clearly terrified. They followed Charlie's footprints in the snow in hopes that it would lead to him, and the screaming continued. Charlie was screaming, "Help! They've got me!" and everyone was frantically searching. Eventually, Charlie's screams began to grow fainter, but they were clearly coming from above, spiraling into the night sky.
Coming in number 3, we have the bad elf. There was an elf who didn't want to work. He hated his job, but he couldn't quit. I mean, you're an elf working the North Pole. What do you do when you don't want to be a toy maker? Update your resume and start shopping it around with the polar bears? Nah, I think you're just gonna work. But it was more than just him hating his job. He hated Santa. He hated Christmas. He hated everything to do with the holiday season, so he wanted to bring the whole thing down. He started to make bad toys and didn't tell anyone. But they weren't just broken, they were traps, and even Santa didn't know, which is really bad as an employer. I mean, you're on top, you're the boss of the whole empire. If things go wrong, then you're the one who's going to take the heat. Oh, and did things ever go wrong? The toys made it to all the kids, and millions of kids got hurt. After this, no one trusted Santa, and his stock price plummeted into the ground. Santa searched and searched for who could have done this. This elf might have ruined Christmas forever, but with all of his searching, he never found out, and none of the other elves knew either. It would seem that the bad elf was too good at his job and too good at hiding his affairs. And after he got away with his plan, he was excited to make toys again to see if he could ruin Christmas again the next year.
In our number 2 spot today, we have a mystery under the tree. Little Timmy was super excited when he woke up around 8 a.m. on Christmas morning. He ran down the stairs to see his parents sitting on the couch having their morning coffee. Timmy was obviously immediately ready to begin opening his gifts under the tree. He saw one that had a bit of a different wrapping paper than the rest and thought to himself that maybe it was a little bit different because it was special. Timmy's parents said that they actually weren't sure where that present had come from, but Timmy assumed that they were just pulling his leg and trying to play a trick on him. He began to unwrap it and saw that it was a package with his name and address on the shipping label. He opened the package, and all that was in it was a letter. The letter read, "Dear Timothy Pines, I watch you while you're sleeping. I know when you're awake. Go to sleep tonight, Timmy, and please do not wake for your own sake. Happy holidays. SC." Who the heck dropped this note off? Because it could not have been the real Santa, and what the heck did they mean? What is gonna happen to Timmy?
And coming in the number 1 spot, we have Hands Trap. There are a lot of cultures around the world that have their version of a bad Santa. Like there's Krampus for some, there's the Grinch for other, or there's Billy Bob Thornton for the real ones.
What do you want? What are you doing? God damn it!
But for the French, they have Hans Trapp. This dude is insane. It's an old story from peasanty times. The story goes that this dude was super rich and got all of his wealth from worshipping Satan. Whoa, that is an intense way to start a Christmas story. Well, from all of this hell power, he kept getting richer and richer. But the church caught wind of his unholy ways, and then they went and took all of his land, money, and possessions. So this forced the crazy Satan man to move into the woods and hide away from everyone. Well, when he was then tucked away in the woods, he went crazy and he tried tried to kill and eat a young shepherd, but got hit by lightning from God because God wanted to stop it. What on earth does this have to do with Christmas? Well, now apparently this guy follows around Santa on Christmas and beats naughty children with a stick. French people would tell their kids the story of Han's trap as a reminder that you better be nice or a cannibal would come to your house and whip you so many times you wouldn't be able to sit for a week. Yeah, that sounds nice.